Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unlocking the Secrets to Expanding Human Potential. I've got my guest with me tonight, Brett Richardson. Well, welcome back, mate. Welcome. I mean, we've got a lot of stuff from the last one we did with you, and it's been well overdue. So welcome back, mate.
Thank you very much, Greg. Great to be here.
Yeah. So I thought this time, I get a lot of questions about this, especially from newbies who I want to understand. I thought, well, you and I can talk about what does spirituality mean? So today we're going to go through what does spirituality mean? How do you take those first steps to actually jump onto your spirituality kind of thing? And we'll get into the word spirituality as a construct anyway, right? Because that's a word and that's a cult in itself, right? Okay. Exactly. And then as to how can people expand their awareness? How can people go inside? What are the things they can do to find that inner peace and that inner wisdom? And do some of the stuff that you've been doing recently, and we just talked before about the esoteric CEO stuff and how to balance the two, right? So it'll just go on, right? So I'll just let Michael in because he was coming home from work. So that's how I wanted to sort of start out. Was from your perspective, what is spirituality?
Okay, so hey Michael, how you going, mate?
Hello, gents. That is a very impressive beard you've got there, my friend.
Well, thanks, mate. Yeah,
I'm very thick.
Get away with it. The wife loves it, so I can keep it.
Yeah, I got the tick of approval, and Gregory, I'm sure you're going okay.
Patchy. I've got
It's good to see you.
Well, we're 12 apostles, and we've got 3 now, so that's good.
Sorry, I'm just being really unhealthy. I'm eating Easter eggs.
Oh yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I've had my fill.
So what for those people that are searching, because they're on to Google and they say, what is spirituality? How do you become more spiritual? What do you do? What Brett, help us out here. What does it mean to be more spiritual, and what is spirituality?
Spirituality to me is actually about the journey of finding self. The first real roadblock that we find is religion, and there is this misconception that religion is spirituality, but it's not. And so from an esoteric standpoint and from a healing perspective, every person on this planet, along with everything, is their own individual point of consciousness, which means that spirituality to them is just a little bit different across each person. So the journey of discovery is the real reason why we're here on the earth. And we just happen to be in like a really negatively stacked computer game almost, where we find ourselves in these deep-seated traumas, etc. So spirituality becomes something on the back burner. And then usually what happens is people have this moment where things get so bad, or they have like a near-death experience, or they have some other traumatic event in their life, and they just stumble across it. They stumble across it because there's nowhere else to go. Nothing can be explained, and it's just a mechanism that activates in self.
Couldn't probably say it better than myself. That was
how really good was that?
Nice. And as you saw, when the first part he said was as a part of self-discovery, like that, it was actually really, really well put together, concise. Because people sort of just they can't explain it. Because we've got a friend, Craig Harper, Hey Harps, who's asked that question a number of times, and he's got 15,000 different answers from 15 different people, right? And it's something that. It's for me, it's just as being in what we call the spiritual industry the last 20 odd years, it's just another cult.
Absolutely.
And the way that you sort of explained it, where it was a personal journey of self-discovery to find oneself, there it is.
It's so articulate. And the point of consciousness, absolutely love that. And fundamentally, that relationship you build with yourself, and then when you become aware of that, the relationship you build between yourself and everything else. And that's that journey, exactly what you're saying, overcoming these points of trauma and these obstacles along the way. And that is spirituality. I love it. It's beautiful.
We should use another word for it. I'm not too sure. But anyway, I train square. So let's just say we're talking to Bob, who's on a work site. Let's say we're talking to Michael, who's working as a CEO or higher up in a bank somewhere like that. And they're living a very three-dimensional life. And how would you explain to people what are some of the first things they could do? Because I get these questions all the time, to understand or tap into that sense of self. What can they do to actually start that first bridge, so to speak, to step into another path?
Well, the first part of this is each of us, as our own individual point of consciousness, viewing from our own lens. So as ourselves say, so our own individual point of consciousness is aware that something is actually different in this reality. So as you go to speak to someone else, you actually get to a point where Bob is actually not awakening, and you realize that. So the first step actually is that you don't interfere with the law of free will, because every individual point of consciousness here is here as a sovereign being. And so just that mechanism of just allowing that person to be where they are is actually the point of what spirituality is, because spirituality is actually a mechanism that you have created in yourself, which activates this energy and it expands your presence to allow more information to come into you, which is outside of the reality in an esoteric sense. So the first part is with Bob is you come with what I call a heart space, and you be there, and Bob, he may be on a journey, and for people like me and yourself, guys, you would see that, and you know that it's a part of a journey. So to not interfere with the law of free will, you do what's called plant a seed. Hey, Bob, how are you going? I'm good. Okay, well, it just seems like perhaps maybe it's not good. If you want to, let's catch up for a coffee next week. Oh, that's great. And often what happens is they'll either feel that connection and they'll act on it or not. And I want to share this with you. I've had a close, you would say, acquaintance over many, many years, and had known this person as in the elite sport area. So, when you're in the 3D space, it's hard to understand that people can change because you're always categorized and pigeonholed. And so this gentleman, over some years, eventually said, oh, what do you do? And you're a healer. And and by holding your space, you actually allow them to open the door themselves. And that's the most important part and this is where I find that the step between what we call mindfulness and healing are quite different, because it's that first step, because the three aspects of self, being the body, the physical self, and then the mind, and then obviously the spirit. So, in the three-dimensional space, we really focus on the physical and the mental, but actually they're actually one in 3D, because it's built up of the ego, and our meat suit or our body, physical body, is attached to the baggage that we hold in 3D. So as a mechanism, first step is plant the seed, allow the person to be themselves, and then it's a waiting game.
Yeah, it's perfect, isn't it? The energy exchange is such a powerful part of it. I had a wonderful conversation with someone today about exactly that topic, and you can feel it. And I couldn't agree more with you that planting that seed and maybe fertilizing a little bit along the way doesn't hurt, but it's sparking the that curiosity about their existence and their place in this reality that we find ourselves, this 3D space. And rarely does someone not want to tap into that and explore it. That's what I find anyway. Maybe the timing's not always right, but relating it back to themselves and the situation they're in, and you just have some wonderful conversations once people open their mind a little bit.
And it's really interesting because as you are in fourth dimension, because we're on this transition into fifth, you can still see the third dimension and you can feel the fifth. And so naturally at fourth, Michael, you're vibrating in a higher way, so you're magnetizing these types of people for these conversations. And so that's definitely one version of doing that. We also have many different aspects which come into play here. The journey that we all come into this reality to live as a part of our experience, to evolve as our own soul, our own individual point of consciousness, so that we can evolve into a higher vibration and being the different density of experience. So it's very simple when you take it from yourself, because as you advance in your own spirituality, you find that the people that you see is just a reflection in yourself. And you might see that reflection as a previous version of you, say, or maybe as a more evolved version of yourself, say, as well. And so the point is that you can just be there in loving connection with this being without attachment.
Yeah, it's beautiful. En Lakesh, I am you, you are me.
Yeah.
It's funny because I know when I first started, there wasn't a lot out there. It was pretty much there wasn't any Facebook, there wasn't any online stuff. But I struggled to find, I ended up going to libraries and stuff like that to trying to figure out what was going on. There's so much more information out there. I think it's actually, I'd struggle now at this first step, try and go, where do I go? Who do I see? Because a lot of, seeking of gurus and to what do I need to wear? Do I need to become vegan? Do I need to do what we've done and grow beard and long hair? You do.
About long hair.
Right. There's a lot of stuff that, and especially when I speak to people from the old corporate days, and that was the good thing about, I suppose, part of the reason why I did what I did was the fact that it showed that you could actually still maintain somewhat of a normal life, but still have this side of you that was very deep and going on a journey. And I think that's part of what Michael and I sort of share, is that you don't have to go off and, be this other thing where you just drop your whole life and that. But it was always, like you said, Brett, it was always thinking about it was never to find anything external. It was always an inner drive to go, okay, well, how can I better myself? How can I find what's, the missing part inside? And I've been to hundreds of people, for different kinds of things. And it's so much more difficult now because there's so much more information out there. I am the guru and follow me and do what I say. And, abundance codes, and I'll reclaim your DNA, and I'll, clear all the stuff from your genetic lineage and all that kind of stuff. Right. It's confusing. Right. And that's the biggest thing I get now is that, where do I go? What do I need to do to start, going where you guys have gone? That's something that I still struggle with, is to trying to give someone a definitive answer, is because it's an individual thing, as you know, and what's the right thing for the person. So I don't know, comment on that.
Okay, so as you become aware that something is changing inside, that first step is really the most awkward. It feels like, and I explain it to my clients, it's stepping into a void. There's nothing there. There's nothing to step into. You're not sure what's going to happen. And that feeling of fear is so high that you don't know what is going to happen. But when you actually go through that, there's an energy that comes through you. And that first part is that you actually begin to see just a little bit differently. It's almost like the lens just shifts slightly, And what happens is you activate this mechanism within, and you actually start to manifest and co-create what is needed for you as an individual. And so that might be a lomi massage, or it might be a multi-dimensional healing, or it might be, a psychic reading, or whatever the case may be. So it is, as you said, Greg, it's different for each person. But what I would say, commenting now, this last 12 months, the red pill, as we call it, is significant. So people are diving deep into, who they are and what this is all about. So I'm seeing more of a trend of my clients who have been, very seasoned beings on the spiritual journey, have actually still coming, but we've got this new phase of people, both young and an older generation, who are really, making this shift from 3 to 4D, and they're doing it gracefully, and they're actually willing to do the work. And what I mean by that is, usually from a 3D perspective, you want to take one step and then process, and then a few months might go by, and then you take your second step, and then you think, great. And then, eventually after 12 months, 3 years, you're in a path of like, okay, I understand what's going on. You expand your presence out to allow it. But now it's just, okay, I want to take the rocket ship out. Just give it to me.
Well, that's the thing is, like I say to people, is that there's no path, right? This is the thing. I've done that many backward steps and seen some dodgy people, and that's all part of the journey, right? That's all. So like you said before, it's all about just opening up to what sets in front of you. And if you get dimensional healing comes in you, or see someone like us, yourself, but you just got to allow that to happen and just start opening up and asking questions of that, because the thing will come to you. But not all those experiences are actually going to be good. It's part of the growth and the learning. So, but you mentioned something really good there, which I think is great to sort of add on to this, right? Tell us, who are we and what is this all about?
So just an easy one.
Just an easy one, just straight to the top.
Sounds like one of our chats, Greg.
Well, this is the conversation I have most of the time actually now. And so what we are is, we are here in an avatar body, and we are actually in a form, what you'd call a higher form of consciousness, which you could call a spirit, or your light body, or your higher self, which is in a totally different space. And you are observing through the eyes of the avatar here. And so that mechanism of awakening is the point of actually being here, so that you can be your true self from the higher realm in a physical form. So that's the whole thing that we're here to experience, through obviously an infinite amount of distortion that we experience here. And that's the reason why we come into this reality, because we take on a different form. We take a heavier density, being here in a third, fourth, into a fifth incarnation, but it's very heavy. So you forget. So the amount of information that you can perceive within this avatar body is so insignificant compared to where you were as a being of light. And that's really the process in which we're going through at the moment, is that transition of really understanding that. So who am I? I am an infinite being of light, born from the one infinite creator, here to experience what the tiny fractal of which I am here as an individual point of consciousness, experiencing on behalf of the one.
Now that ties it all in, right? I love how we're simplifying this stuff. Spirituality 101, Brett Richardson, simple stuff. Because you've set up there, you've tied it all around there about who we really are, having this experience. And then I think that answers the question about what is spirituality as well too, because it comes back to this is the experience we're having, right? And it's an experience. A lot of us get hung up on the fact is this person's doing this and this person's doing that, because they're all aspects of ourselves anyway, right? In the infinite reality. And when I think people, when I see people make the massive shift, that when they get that, that's the shift that makes, and they realize that they're identifying with an avatar, that they're an infinite being, then the light goes on and then things start to shift completely. That for me is the big switch for people going, I'm in a 3D world, chasing my career and my holidays and all that kind of stuff, which you can still do, right? And then switching to, okay, I'm a spiritual being looking through the eyes of his avatar, having an experience, co-creating in life, having ups and downs, left and rights, backwards and forwards, and experiencing all the emotions of the human body. But that's the journey. And that's where I think it shifts.
Yeah, spot on. And I've said this to you many times, Greg, that big awakening for me was that life is the gift. This ability to live that experience in this body is the greatest gift we can be given. And it just ties in. So I love listening to you, Brett. It's just, yeah, it's really, really good.
I could have a 4-hour podcast. I could do.
Yeah,
I could break
for sure. Well, the other thing you said, it's the remembering. So you're right. The density does mean that we do forget, and we've disconnected. But that's that opportunity that we have, and the potential is reconnecting and remembering. And then once we have that epiphany, that awakening, living in that co-creative state, and when you're in that flow, it's just extraordinary, the stuff that comes into your life and the energy and the way you attract things.
Yeah,
it's very exciting.
And the thing is, like, the other thing I get asked, and I've sort of danced around it before, but what can people do on a day-to-day basis to start to open up their awakening or opening up their experience of spiritual presence? What can they do?
So with the three aspects of self from a 3D perspective, there's the physical, the mind, which is the mental, and then the spiritual. The best place to start is the physical. And so some of the best things to do is to just sit down for 2 minutes, just be quiet, and actually just try to hold a moment in yourself without having one thought. Put a timer on and see how long that takes. For an average person, it's probably 15 seconds before the mind comes in. If you can get yourself to 30 seconds without having any thoughts come into your mind, you're actually ready to start a meditation practice. And a meditation practice to me is between 2 and 10 minutes for the first few months. And the reason why is you don't want to allow the mind to come in to take it over to say you can't do it.
Yes. Yes.
Because, you know, and this is the beautiful part. And we talk a lot in paradox when we discuss spirituality, because it's all connected into the one. So at each point, it actually points back to the start, which it should. So what happens is,
oh, we've got a dodgy line.
The dodgy line with
the ground between is the mind and being able to become the mind.
We missed that last part because you cut out. So just repeat that last part. The last 20 seconds.
Energy's too high.
Yeah.
The energy's too high.
We broke it again.
The internet can't keep up.
We've broken it for a second time tonight.
Yeah. So essentially, we are living in a paradox that no matter where we can actually place that moment that we're in, we should always come to a point in which we can be free of self. The thing that's in the way of that freedom is your mind at a 3D perspective. It's always there telling you that something's not quite right, that, you know, I'm not good enough. Am I doing it right? Yeah, and it's just this kind of mechanism. And when you realize that that voice inside of you might actually not be you, because it's so limited, and it's always telling you what's wrong, then that is that catalyst that creates the bridge between yourself in a non-awakened state, or the sleeping state, as we refer to it, or an emerging or awakening state.
And that's great segue, Mikey. This is my last, not the last question, but you can ask. I've got a list a mile long. Sorry, buddy. The next sort of part that confuses people is that if I go down the spiritual awakening, will it affect my personal relationship? So I have a lot of pushback from people's partners because they think if their partner goes down this rabbit hole, they're going to leave me and end up in a retreat somewhere and living with bare feet and stuff like that, right? And it's a common kind of thing, especially in partnerships, intimate relationships where one person goes and is awakening, the other person is not, and they get really fearful about the other person's on this journey, and they hold them back because their fear is that they will become this different person. Well, they are, but they're not, and they may leave that relationship. And it's something that I've had to explain again, like yourself, pretty much on a daily basis, that fear is unsubstantiated 90% of the time as well too. Just tell us about that.
So our society has created a system that sets us up for failure. The first part is, and this is just being brutally honest,
yep,
are you actually with the right partner? That's the first part. So that in itself is some of the biggest work that an individual point of consciousness can actually embark on.
Yep.
That's the first part.
Yep.
Now, regardless of whether you're on the spiritual path yourselves or not, or together or individually, if you're supporting each other, that actually creates a mechanism within your relationship without you knowing. So regardless if you would say that, say for you, Greg, you're emerging and say your wife wasn't, she would feel that energy actually rising within you. And she would generally, and say 95% of the time, be attracted to it. The other 5% is that she's scared that she likes it and will actually relinquish some type of control in some way. And that just really is an indicator that it's a third density perspective, and that's totally fine because that will work itself out. So if that happens, that's fine. I speak to, there's probably 50% male and female, and most of my clients are married and have children, have lives together. So they have a partner, and more often than not, the partner will come for a session.
Yeah.
And that's because they actually have an interest. They're intrigued. Something has changed. Regardless if they agree with it or not, they feel a change. They feel like there's some opening in the structure of the relationship, which gives them more space to be free. And that's where the real beautiful work starts, because that's where, we find we get past the
Happened again, Michael. He's got too much energy, way too much energy. And again, you and I find this in the stuff that we do, is that there's that fear there, that block there, that especially from some partners that tend to be a bit afraid.
It's confronting.
Well, it's completely confronting. And it's difficult because it's a fear-based kind of thing, right? So, and it's a really when you get people to come around and actually understand what's happening and what's going on, and the ability then to explain to them that this is something that can work for both of them in a very, very strong and open way, that they can really make their relationship so much better, then they're on board. But I find it's a society thing that we
limit ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fundamentally, why we started the podcast of unlocking your potential, because we're not educated to have these conversations and help each other live to their fullest. It's used often as a platitude, Whereas in practice, it often means you're very uncomfortable and confronting because it brings out the best and the worst in people.
Yeah.
And often to see, you build attachments to things. So to see your partner then making a change, what does this mean for me, is often the first question they ask, rather than this is wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah. You broke it again, Brett. I don't know. It's just your energy is just breaking stuff left, right, and center.
No. I'm so sorry, Jess.
You're right. Mr. McNair, you've had a big day anyway, so fire away.
One of the topics I spend a lot of time thinking about and exploring is living in this 4D space. So one of the reasons that Greg and I really kicked off 5D was to help people transition their awareness, I suppose, from the low vibration, the high density 3D physical existence, and start to unlock the curiosity about the big questions. And we touched on that lightly before. But when you're in that space and you have awareness of so much more, it can be quite a challenge sometimes, for me personally at least, to stay grounded, because I often find this awareness, this knowledge, this curiosity, it's so expansive. There's this infinite and eternal amount of information that we become attached to and experience. And then coming back to the sort of, I've got to wash the dishes and pay the bills. So like, no, I want to be out there creating amazing things and working with humans and all this sort of stuff. I'd love to hear a bit about your experience to coming out of the typical 3D reality that both Greg and I have found ourselves into, to being this bridge that helps people live and transition between 3D and 4D and have these incredible epiphanies about themselves and the potential of what's possible, not only for themselves, but for the whole community and the whole universe in its totality. Big question. Sorry, I tend to get carried away.
No, absolutely. And I guess you got to start at the start. And so the start for me is when I remember when I was here on the planet last time. And this was 12,500 years ago. And at that time, we were actually fourth density beings. We were already in the state of that fourth D. And so what happened was that things went awry and we got influenced in the negative, and then we descended into third. So the most important part is that souls that are coming to Earth may have actually already been here incarnate as a fourth density being, but have just forgotten.
Right.
So that's a really important part. The next part is that the fourth density is different to the third density experience. You have much more tools in your toolbox to actually live your life. And in that toolbox, there's a lot of tools which counter the third density experience. They're all quite positive, actually. You want to spread love. You want to be really positive in the way you're going about.
Yeah, act with compassion, all those sorts of things. Yeah.
Which is the mechanism of fourth, which is the way that you can have evidence into yourself to actually be able to see that you're in fourth density. There is a bit of also a point when a being is in fourth density and they realize that they're interacting with the third density, which happens every day. We live on the earth. That you really need and feel a need to raise the vibration with these people in the 3D. And that might be at a coffee shop, someone's throwing a coffee at you and you just say thank you anyway, because you know that we're on this journey together.
Right.
And so the perspective that you're on and the perspective that perhaps the person at the coffee shop are on are different, but you're actually one. We're just at different, what you would call stages of an evolution. You're standing on a bridge, you can see one way, and one way is, the past, and thank goodness I'm past that. And, I'm going to do all I can to help everyone else to go past. But while you're on that bridge, you're actually also interacting and feeling and really seeing behind the veil of really all the negative that we've been subjected to over many lifetimes. And there's two parts. One is the relief of being in fourth. And the other part is the annoyance and frustration that it is.
The burden of awareness.
Yeah, the burden of awareness. And that actually is the final mechanisms that are set inside our physical body to actually go free to fifth. And because every day we are interacting, we are washing dishes, we are paying bills, we're doing all these things that we know we shouldn't have to do anymore because we're at a different state of awareness. But therein lies the beautiful part of your own plan, your divine plan from within to actually make that transition into fifth. Because from fourth to fifth, it's like you are coming out of the cave and you are ready to fly the spaceship. It's a completely different reality. And so I tend to find that a lot of beings that come and interact with me are making this transition from the upper end of third density experience or into the fourth density experience. And those beings are, equally as beautiful. They're exactly the same. There is no difference between them, just their own individual awareness of where they are at that moment. So while you look on the bridge, there's thank goodness I'm on the bridge, but the bridge is just halfway across.
Yeah.
We're going to another place. So we focus on that, and that energy actually pulls everyone through. And that's what this time is.
And part of the discussion Greg and I often have is we feel like a key part of our journey is sharing this information and awareness so that people they have a point of contact with what is beyond, and then there's an integration opportunity. Someone is there to kind of walk with them, as we do with each other anyway. And we have some pretty interesting discussions around it.
Yeah, and it gets to the point, like you said before, it was some of the attributes that I see with people when they make that jump from that third dimension into fourth dimension. Well, definitely self-reflection, like you said before, Brett, is that first part is they can look at themselves and reflect at everything. And the big leap from there is that there's beauty in everything, even the negative. And when they shift to that part of seeing the beauty in everything, they're even then that there's just light years.
It's a mad headspace.
It's just in a place that people can't touch you from that. When you're in that place of just complete gratitude and beauty from that place. Yeah. And then, I have to sit down and explain, and this, so I'll go around tangents. This is what I do, right? The next part that I say to people is that, and Michael and I have conversation with this, most weekends with people, right? Is that part of the awakening is your sexual awakening.
Yeah.
And there's the Kundalini awakening, and I found there was a massive feminine energy through me, and through that, and the sexual connection with somebody from when you're in 4D, you cannot explain it. You cannot with a partner. You've got a partner in 4D, and you're in that place. It blows your mind.
Yeah. Okay, this is so good. I love this topic. It's like the most exciting topic because actually we are here in a physical form, and it's to be celebrated. And you get to a stage because as you become aware that it's all about your own self, and that what's happening on the outside is just your own projection. You actually begin to become aware that, you find a place inside yourself, which you didn't think was possible. And you find this big love inside yourself.
Yeah.
And once that's activated, it actually sparks the awakening of the Kundalini. And, you know, in a lot of Indian and mystic traditions, tantric sex is, you know, the way to awaken the Kundalini. And, you know, that's to be celebrated. Obviously, you know, it helps when your partner is on that same path and is open to it.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's not a taboo subject, that's for sure. Because what you'll find is, as you research why it would be taboo, it all reflects back to religion, which is being created as a construct to keep us separated.
Yeah, all the rules, the bullshit rules.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, are we supposed to be promiscuous? Are we supposed to be together forever? That is your own individual point of consciousness and the path that you walk. For my individual point of consciousness, I have a beautiful wife who I love very deeply and love more deeply every day, and have 3 beautiful children, and I feel complete around that. Some beings, you know, feel that they need to have multiple relationships to kind of quench that thirst, and that's fine too. This is the thing about an awakening, is it's your own journey. And, you know, when you begin to understand that and you look within, you realize that, you know, everything that inside yourself is the most important part. And then you're not intertwined into the distortion of someone else's experience, and you can just allow them to do what they feel is right for them.
It's
free
funny
of judgment. That's probably. I was going to say you become free of judgment. There's no negative connotation that you attach to other people's actions or behaviours. You kind of just have this wisdom or this understanding that, you know, they're doing it for their own reasons and they're exactly where they need to be. And it's I use the word hesitantly, but unconditional love. You kind of grasp the concept of it in a unique way. And it's a nice feeling, I guess.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than discovering yourself. It's the final frontier, you know, about what really gets you stimulated, what really makes you tick, you know, where you can find yourself and dive deeply into yourself. And I'm not saying that you're having intimacy with yourself, but what I'm saying is it could be like that as an observation from the third density, but it's an intertwining of 2 beings. And, you know, we've taken the sacredness away from the actual act itself, you know, through, you know, huge amounts of, you know, smut all over the internet and you know, like girls with no clothes on, and, you know, men like doing debaucherous things, and, you know, but if you come back to the simplicity of the reason why we're here, we're actually here to experience love. We're here to dive deep and to really understand what makes us tick, and to not feel guilty about that, not to feel those low vibratory energies in that space. And when you actually find that space, and I would say this to your viewers, guys, is if you want the beautiful mechanism to actually take yourself on this journey, the intimacy is just something that you couldn't even imagine. It's just in a different reality.
Different realm. They got no clue. And see, Michael and I, we do this trick, right? We have this, we have this 5D model, right? Which we work on 3D, 4D, 5D. And there's a trick to it. And I'm going to sort of let our listeners know the part of the trick. So when we work in 3D, Michael and I, we work on the physical side of things. It's about who are you? What's your identity? What are your beliefs? What are your values? What are your perceptions? What are your emotions? We deal on the 3D stuff. We get people, we make people, you know, take it from here to there, and they don't have depression or anxiety anymore, and they have this purpose and they have the passionate life, and they get on whack, right? They go through that model. And they go, Michael, I want to go and do the 4D model. I say, okay, come on board. The first meeting we'll have them is, who are you? And I'll go, well, we're this and this and this and this and this and this. We did this, you know, remember we did this chart and remember this? And I say, we lied to you. That was the 3D version of you, right? Who are you? And they kind of go, well, what are you talking about? And it's like, actually, yeah, who are you? And it's like, but well, I'm that. No, you're not. You never
Strip
were
back the
that.
veil.
And it's like, but you told us, like, yeah, that's the 3-dimensional. That's why it's a 5D model we're speaking about here. So it's very funny when you say to people, it's like, all of a sudden we've been working in their, 3-dimensional world to move them from their, issue they've got in their life in their 3-dimensional world to go, okay, we're going down the more spiritual path. And the first question I ask is, who do you think you are? And they'll always go back to that 3D version.
Go back to the identity. Yeah.
Identity, and I'll say, none of that's true. And it starts to think, what are you talking about? I just paid you all this money to go and fix this shit. Now you tell me it's not true. And it really starts to question in their head. And it's really, I love playing that trick on people. It gets them every single time. Now the trick's out, right? People understand what I'm saying when I do that, right? Is it because it gets them that thinking, well, right, well, who am I? And that's sort of, how I segue people into, going down that path, because it's mean, really, what you do. So,
well, for me in my own space, I don't think it's mean, because the point is that they've come to actually know, they've come to understand, and when you're coming to learn essentially a different language, there's some ego in the way. And there's, we in the third density side, we look for things that we can hold on to, things that we believe are real. And so that's what we want. We want to be the leader. We want to be the one that's in charge. We want to be the one with all the answers. And that's hard when you're learning a different language.
Well, it's so funny because everything we just do, here's your identity, and we go, by the way, take it all back now. Let's just destroy it. And it's so funny. It may have been working for some of us guys work with us for 3 months, 6 months, right? And then we go, let's just destroy all that now. It's so funny.
But only when they're ready.
Only when they're ready.
So don't push anyone off the end of the pier before they're ready.
We know what's coming, right? We're sitting there going, we're setting up these people going, oh, they got no clue what's coming in 2 weeks' time. They're going to be sitting there going, what the hell have they just done? And it's like, but it's liberating for people because
amazing.
It's such a eye-popping moment for people to go, we've been with you guys for six weeks. You haven't mentioned this stuff, or 6 months. My life is really good. Now you're telling me to strip it all back. And it's like, yes. And all of them get it, right? Because we've primed them that way. And that's the biggest thing, is that, stepping into that is abolishing the identity, which sounds hard. And going back to my question before, is that thing where that in the relationship, will he leave me, or won't you leave me, or will she leave me, won't she leave me? And then you say to people, we're going to strip your identity away. Oh, then the fear comes up. What about my job? What about my family? What about my kids? And, that's a big thing for people.
Yeah, because those first stages of that understanding is fear, because they attach themselves to that identity, and the identity is what they do for work and how they manage their life, because it's been hard. They've had to maneuver themselves to find a way around all the system so that they can believe that every third month they might go away camping for a weekend or what have you, and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So it's a large paradigm to walk through, but such is life. When you realize who you are, you actually realize that you can have everything. You realize that you can still have the role, you can still have the holiday, you can still do this, and perhaps you might just do it in a more graceful way, more compassionate way, and more loving way. And that's the point.
Yeah. And it's like, because like we're giving away trade secrets here, but I think
we're going to have words later, I think, Gregory.
is we prime them, because from day dot, we start working on like you're saying, we work from an inside out methodology, right? We don't work even though we're working from an external perspective from 3D, we talk about the external stuff. We're actually working from an inside out model. And by the time they get to that transition to 4D, it's not so bad, because they're already in that inside manner. So it's not a big shock to them in that kind of way. So
did you explain the logo? So the whole point is you got the square in the middle. So it's the square peg in the round hole, and the square peg in the middle is the spirit.
Yeah, that is so good.
Yeah. So just Have you got any more questions to ask Michael? Because I want to go on a complete tangent again.
Yeah, look, I've got one, and this is one we kind of touched on it with the low vibrational stuff, and we come across, all of us, things every day that we know are not in the collective good. For those of us that are trying to traverse the path where we're doing no harm, or we're trying to raise the vibration, what are your thoughts and suggestions around how we deal with those things when we see them, and I guess B, how we create an environment or stimulate action so that others are starting to step in and step up and really start to replace some of these low vibrational activities, or confront things and act in love and compassion and all of those things that we know actually are going to take us all to the next level and a wonderful community that we can be part of.
Yeah. The first stage here is identifying in yourself, are you vibrating at your highest frequency that you can? That's actually the most important thing to do first, is to actually ensure that yourself is on a path which is in your greatest good. So what I mean is that, perhaps you might be in a 9-to-5 job, and you may work 40 hours a week. You spend 4 hours in the traffic a day, and then you have a weekend off to sit on the couch and watch footy. And as you're emerging from that, that's a reality. But what happens is you may just start to shift some things in your life. Like, for instance, on Saturday morning, you might actually go for a walk. You might actually ask your wife to come for a walk. And by doing that, you are actually raising the vibration for the collective. Now, in third density experience, we believe to be successful and to win, you have to be on top. We're in a hierarchical kind of society. But in 4 and 5D, we're all equal.
Yeah.
So it actually doesn't matter. And yes, what can we do to raise the vibration? The first thing is to realize that you're not right. To be right is to be in 3D. So as a 4D merging into the 5th 5D, is that you just simply need to understand inside yourself that another being's view, or another human being in front of you, their view is their view. It's their truth. And your truth doesn't supersede their truth because you believe that you're higher than their truth. They are actually there to reflect to you something that you need to see right in that moment. And that's it. So some of the mechanisms that you can create are things like this, the podcast. This is a perfect example of how you do that. It's just you are taking time out of your own busy weeks to give this information readily for the human population. It's a very high order of sharing and connecting into the group consciousness. And for some of the listeners that don't quite understand that, because they're kind of understanding what spirituality is that you have your own vibration as your own person. And then we are all connected because we're all one, like in this grid or the spider's web that they talk about in ancient texts, where we are all connected into this oneness. And so if your vibration and my vibration is higher, then that affects the collective consciousness. And so as we want to gather into community and perhaps grow food and share it, or develop podcasts or develop programs or retreats or whatever the case may be, they're all perfectly designed in their way. If your intention is to raise the vibration in the collective, then you're there. You're there before you've actually started. And that's the point. And that's what it is to be in 4D. In 4D, things manifest really quickly. We just believe that we need to have the return. We've got to wait some time to get some type of return to realize that we are successful. So we're successfully being 3D and a 4D sense.
Yeah, I get it. Great insight. I love that. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So for you, my friends, what's happening with you? What's happening with Ra? What are any poignant things that are going on at the moment for you? And tell us about any messages or anything that are important right now for people that are experiencing some kind of journey into the inner worlds.
Whew. Okay, where do we start with this one? So I have been delving as deeply as I can go into this last several months about what is happening here upon the planet. And I've found myself sleeping roughly 2 hours a night and am in a state of meditation for roughly 8 hours, consistently every night, 7 days a week. And what I'm finding now is that the energies that are coming through are this emergence of what I call the Christ consciousness, a very high vibratory energy of a pillar of white light, which is actually here upon the earth right now. And I don't make this, this point in a biblical sense, because what we know in that space is probably not completely correct. But what I'm saying is there is an energy now upon the earth which is so epic for all of us that we don't and will never understand here in this, this version of reality that we're living. And the whole world has gone absolutely crazy at the same time. We are experiencing the biggest inversion of reality that we've ever seen. And from my perspective, you can see it every day when you see people walking down the street with masks on and lining up for vaccinations. And that might be a very difficult thing to hear, but we also have to come to this in our own way. How many people out there are actually just doing it because a box has told us to do it? How many people have actually taken the time to really understand what is happening on this planet right now? The control systems, the collapse of our society. This is cyclical. Every great civilization has its apex and its end. And that's the way it's done. And so are we going to allow this to be the end for us? Are we going to allow our freedoms taken away and to not be able to travel and to not be able to interact with our own family? Not to be there for our community members who are struggling through these really difficult times? The people who actually suffered death in families from this disease that was created from human beings that we all know now. And while that's a really difficult thing to say, in the inversion, there is so much white light that is here for us. The way that the grace that I'm witnessing here upon the earth at the moment, the way that we're finding the connections with each other, the way that people and the way they interact is so much deeper now. The communication that's coming across different family structures and different government bodies and all this is actually merging. It's almost like both ends of the spectrum are actually coming together. We're actually creating something different. When this universe was created, it was created through severe collision. That's how it's birthed, through this colliding of planets. And that's how everything is created from that. And it feels to me, in my space, that is actually what is happening here. right now on the planet. And it is such an exciting time. I feel every day that I am here living, breathing, experiencing is a blessing on a blessing. And I feel that I am completely marinating and consumed into this beauty and tranquility of what we are here on the earth, to be here free, to be here upon our own sovereign self, to experience life in our own way without control mechanisms that are taking over our lives, to be here to experience love in ways that we didn't think were possible. And it is such a beautiful time, gentlemen, to be here. And if we could just all take a breath and really be able to sit and be right now, we would find that we are living in a miracle right now. It is such an amazing time. And for the people that are discovering spirituality, you know, God bless you for making that commitment to yourself. This is what it's going to take. It's going to take something that you believed you didn't have to do. And now is that time to go and be on this path. And the energy that's coming through at the moment is so high. There are so many beings that are just outside of this reality, which are here helping right now. You know, we haven't been in nuclear strikes. We haven't seen all these horrific things happen, which we've seen over many decades. You know, we're now beginning to understand that all the heinous crimes that we didn't know about are starting to come out, and we're going to see more of those. And so thank you. Thank you, everyone, is my point.
Amazing. And you know, what you've said all the way through tonight is just because it's always reflected on when you're searching for that first step into spirituality or to have that awakening. It's the inward journey, not the external journey, and that's something you've threaded through tonight. Is that the first step is not looking externally for something; it's going within, and then that's a beautiful way to finish it off. Michael, any final comments?
No, I might go and do my 2 minutes of Zen after this.
Well, guys, thank you for listening to the podcast. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the subscribe button is down below. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, hit the subscribe button. But if you want to know more about how to make that first leap of faith, how to actually go in, we'll put some links into Brett. Is a magnificent healer. We'll put Brett's links into the podcast, into the YouTube. And if you want to reach out to us or Michael and I, you know, both of us can help in that area about you finding that first step into go inwards and finding yourself, which is no self.
At least, yeah, until Greg unpacks it all.
I destroyed all of you. So, Brett, a big thank you for being part of this.
Oh, bless you,
thank
gentlemen.
you, brother. You're amazing.
It's been a beautiful discussion again. Thank you for having me.
Cool. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.